Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ryan Nidek. I'm the LEC chair for the Student Engineers Council here at Virginia Tech. It's my great honor and privilege to put together this panel today. It's going to be called Leading from Below. So what that basically means is we have some people here who are current Virginia Tech students and interns at companies, some of whom have signed or are about to sign, full-time offers or hoping to turn internships into offers. And we have one person here who is a recent alumni who turned an internship into work opportunities and took an unconventional path along the way. So we're really excited. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ally Peck, who's our moderator, to introduce herself, and then let the panelists all introduce themselves after that.
Cool, thanks Ryan. I'm Alexandra Peck. I'm a senior in biological systems engineering. And this past summer, I worked at Frito-Lay in their Lynchburg plant as a supply chain leader intern. And I actually just signed a full-time offer to go back and work for them after graduation in May. And I'll hand it off to Daniel to introduce himself.
Oh, hey guys. Yeah, excuse me, I'm slower on Zoom. I'm Daniel Kimmenaugh. I graduated actually just in May from mechanical engineering. And let's see, along the way, I interned, I did a co-op rotation program at Eastman Chemical. I interned for a year at a small industrial automation company. And then I interned at SpaceX, went full-time at SpaceX, and then was part of the team that started the Boring Company. So yeah, no, I've had a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm excited you guys are here.
Awesome, I'll go next. I'm Jenny Lynn. I am a senior in industrial and systems engineering with a minor in green engineering. I'm also a senior and graduating in May. I've had 3 internships now with GE, but my first 2 were with aviation. My first one, I was just a general manufacturing supply chain intern. My next one was in a lean role. And then my last internship this past summer was with GE Renewable Energy, and I was an NPI intern, a new product introduction, and just kind of supporting the team with that. And then I'm about to sign a full-time offer with GE Renewable Energy for their operations management leadership program, just program in general.
All right, and hi everyone, my name is Danny Flynn. I'm a junior right now in electrical engineering, class of 2022. I did 2 internships with a company called Leidos, both working on the air traffic management programs that the United States uses. The first year as a systems engineering intern, the second year as a software engineering intern, and actually had a little bit of a change of gear this last summer. I went to a smaller company called Herrick Technology Labs. They are a smaller, primarily Air Force and Army contractor that makes software-defined radios, and I worked as a communication systems engineering intern there. And if I didn't say already, I'm in electrical engineering.
Cool, thanks everyone. So we're gonna go ahead and ask a bunch of questions. And if you have any questions throughout this, put the questions in the chat and we'll be sure to answer as many as we can at the end, time allowing. So the first question will be, what was the single most rewarding thing from your internship experience?
I can start off.
Go ahead, Danny.
Thanks. So I think that immediately at all my internships, the single most important thing or rewarding thing that I got out of it was just learning stuff that I wouldn't otherwise have learned in school, at least until later on. So most recently at Herrick Tech Labs, before then I hadn't taken any communication systems classes, any RF classes, but I learned like so much about antenna theory, which is something you don't really learn until senior year normally, and also a lot about like electronic warfare and direction finding, and even a tiny bit of like analog radio frequency circuit stuff. The other thing that I can't recommend enough that you do this. If you do have a good relationship with your manager, the other, I think, rewarding thing I got out of my most recent internship was getting a recommendation from my manager. And it's actually just a publicly posted recommendation. I went and asked, and he posted it on my LinkedIn for me. So if you can do that, that's a super rewarding thing that you can get that'll set you up for the future.
Yeah, that's definitely something I wish I did. I know the value of it now to have like a recommendation on LinkedIn, but just in general, one of the things that really has stayed with me, it's I almost sound like a broken record, but connecting and like networking with people. This is a big thing in GE as well, but in general, networking with people, I think it's just so important because especially in big companies and small as well, you never know the opportunities that are present to you unless you go out and look for them. And a lot of that is certain roles and certain areas of expertise. So like, how would I know what an engineer at GE Renewable Energy does if I don't go and talk to one and ask about their day-to-day or what projects they're working on, or how can I support as an intern? Or something that I'm currently interested in, and like, how can I learn more? And people are just a wealth of knowledge, and really just like pick people's brain of just like, what do they do? What do they know? All right, awesome. Like, I'm interested about this, and like, what do you know about this? And every day you learn something new from people, like, let alone the technology that you're working with every day too. But definitely just going out and meeting people. I definitely think I wouldn't be where I am today unless I went out and did that during my internships and even after, and just keeping in touch with people.
Cool. Anything to add, Daniel? You're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. But those are both, yeah, like great answers. I can relate strongly to them. I think each internship has given me something very different, but overall, like for me, it was like delivering on something, either connected me to people or like it was once said to me that like after an internship, you're playing in an entirely different league when you go apply to new internships or jobs. And that was, for me, after the first internship, I had something to talk about in interviews rather than just like, I did this project in class, or like I worked on this club in school. So being able to like show that I delivered something, and then knowing, talk to these people and like, oh, my friend worked over there, and like that helps with that. So I think the first internship, it's just about like getting yourself into that league of like young professionals. And then after that, it's just like how big of a thing can you deliver? So, yeah.
Awesome. So we will head on to the next question. As an intern or new employee, have you ever felt that your voice was not being heard? And if so, how did you overcome that?
This is not a good answer, but honestly, I haven't really felt that before in my internship specifically. The community I'm around, the team that I'm on, definitely very much so like engaged and wants to know what your opinion is. Like, you're brought in as an intern to bring a wealth of new knowledge and to get ideas flowing, whether it's from your outside opinion, from other companies that you've been to, or just in general. So I can't really say I've experienced that before, but I guess how to overcome it is just, I don't know, I guess keep mentioning your opinion or your thoughts on something until eventually someone's like, oh yeah, that is a good idea. And even if someone else takes credit for it, which is like, of course, very frustrating, at least like you somehow made an impact as well of offering that idea too.
I'm gonna have to agree with that. Mostly, I never really got that feeling. If anything, at least at both of the companies I worked at, your coworkers will want to know what your opinion is on problems. And really the hardest thing, at least that I found, that's kind of related to that is just not being able to get a time slot in to talk to them. So the most difficult part about not being heard is really just getting time to sit down and talk to the people that can help you. So for me, this last summer, that was my manager. He was super busy all the time. He was managing like 20 interns. So make sure to schedule ahead by a week or two. You're muted again, Daniel.
All right, I'm gonna figure this one out eventually. But it's awesome that you guys have always been heard. I've absolutely felt like interns are to be neither seen nor heard, and like part of that is like you're the new person in the room, and you're like no one's stopping and thinking about it. But my recommendation there is just like be technically correct, like know the answer that everyone else is speculating on, and then and then like you will become the person who answers the question. I spent a lot of time in meetings trying to not talk, because in my view, like I could either say something and like get it wrong and just like be a drain on the team, or I could go figure out the answer, and then you know, we probably didn't need to have the meeting in the first place. So yeah, for me, like going from new guy in the room to like, you know, old dog in the room was just about like do your legwork and know what you're talking about. And when you know what you're talking about, then it's very easy to be kind of heard and well respected. But it's certainly easy to find a room full of people who are just like expressing an opinion on something and don't really know.
Yeah, those are all great answers. I definitely echo all of them, and just learning and getting your voice out there. So we can go on to the next one. How do you differentiate yourself as an intern and show your leadership potential in only one summer?
Initiative, 100%. Taking something on, like whether it's assigned to you, is good, but what does it take to be great? And like that's something that you want to talk to your manager with, of sometimes being direct, like what is good versus great. But also, like if you're interested in something, like go ahead and go get interested more, like go find out answers to it and look into it more. And just take an initiative where you need to do that extra legwork and you're not afraid to just go out and do it. Is super, super important. And being able to just get your hands dirty and take initiative and ambition on something.
I have kind of 3 tips for this, 3 key points. The first one is simply just to go above and beyond on your projects. If you're asked to add X functionality, add X plus 2 functionality in the same amount of time, and you will impress. So for example, this past summer, I was asked to create a cascade analysis calculator. And what that means is it's a tool for RF circuits. And I was only asked to do it with a command line program in MATLAB. And in addition to that, when I showed it to my boss for the first or second time, I said, oh, hey, I also built this like graphical application. This might help out some of the maybe younger members, or even some of the other interns that have to do this kind of stuff. My second tip is that documentation is absolutely key. You need to make sure that your work is documented in the perfect level of detail with respect to what it does. So I built all these MATLAB applications over the summer. In addition to like commenting my code, I had all these PowerPoint presentations that at a high level explains the functionality of how the program works, how all these different functions interact. I threw in block diagrams, etc. The last thing is your first week of your internship, you should email your boss and have a summary of what you did every single day of that week. And you should say, hi, Mr. Boss, I'm going to send you these every week. And I don't really care if you read them or not, but I want to make sure that you know what I'm doing all the time, number one. And number two, ask to keep those updates when you're done with your internship, because then when you're preparing for an interview later in the year, you can go and say, okay, what was something I really struggled with at that last internship? And then you say, oh, on June 13th, I had this trouble trying to figure out this one angle between these two things.
Broken record, but I like both of those pieces of advice are just like brilliant pieces of advice. Definitely sending updates is like a really good way to hold yourself accountable as well. Like nothing infuriates me more than sending an update at the end of the day that like I didn't get something done. So I will work towards like making sure that update is correct. And then the tough one with like differentiating yourself in only one summer, that was the part of this question that stuck out to me. Like that is an exceptionally difficult thing to do. And my recommendation is don't let it be one summer. We were discussing earlier, but like I took an incredibly unconventional route through school. And so when I was at Eastman, I did a 1-year rotation program, which meant that instead of just like 2.5 months in the summer, I was getting 4 months in each rotation. and then like doing multiple rotations. So even if I was in a different role, I was still like building off of the same people. And then especially when I went and worked at a small company at IAS, like I was the responsible person for a project, and it took a year, and it was like a $7 million project. And like when we delivered it is like because I delivered it. And so, I mean, it was difficult and I made a ton of mistakes, but I like stuck around long enough to figure it out. And I basically just kept saying like, school doesn't matter, school doesn't matter. And in the end, that was the correct thing to do. Internships and co-ops are really nice because it's a lot easier to get in somewhere through that method than it is to get in full time. And there's essentially no cost to changing between companies, and it's expected. So yeah, go if you're doing well, like have no fear of pushing off school. Virginia Tech especially is really nice about letting you kind of like pick up and drop school as whenever you need to. And like, especially right now, like school doesn't seem like it's that fun if everything is Zoom calls. So I would highly recommend everyone, you know, like take time and go work on something really awesome and delay graduation, because in the end, no one will care when you graduated, but the things that you've delivered on, that's what matters, and that's how you show your leadership.
Yeah, another quick thing to add, at PepsiCo, I had a different opportunity in that the ops staff and the upper management were very, very accessible to the interns. We met with them different times a week. And one thing that I found was very helpful and that looked good on me was that I would reach out to them after they met with us with follow-up questions on what they presented to us, or just even if you don't have a question, like I loved learning about the processing of the potato chips or something like that, just something that you noticed that you really found yourself interested in, and just thanking them for their time to talk to you. I think that really helped me like stand out, and they remembered my name better that way. Like, oh, this is the girl that reached out to me about this. She seems to be really interested and engaged in the internship. So that's some other advice that I have. But thank you guys for that. The next question is, what was the largest learning curve that you dealt with transitioning from an academic to a professional environment? And what is something you wish an engineering education included that would have helped you be a more successful intern?
I'm happy to jump on this one. I was not particularly engaged in school, and when I went into a co-op, I was like completely overwhelmed by just the professionalism side. Like I did not know what it meant to like keep a personal calendar and like show up to meetings and like be prepared for things like that. And I'm really grateful that I did some internships, like essentially some burner internships first, because it allowed me to like figure those things out. And SpaceX used to have a policy. They've kind of gone away from it, and I think that's a mistake. But the policy was that SpaceX would never be your first internship. And I think that was really smart, because like I walked into SpaceX with like 3 years of professional engineering experience, and I was drinking from a fire hose. Like I was like, it's overwhelming to the best people. And I think like, you know, the best way to do this is like do an internship and like do them early so that the expectation of you is low, and try to like let your managers know like, hey, I don't know, I've never had to deliver on a real like project that I am responsible for. And then like spend like a couple hours a week just learning the professionalism side of it. That will end up paying you back a lot more than just like learning and how to solve another problem or like do another set of analysis. Like you'll find like anyone can run the same MATLAB analysis that you can, right? But like the person who walks into a meeting completely prepared and has called all the vendors and has like a compiled list of what questions need to be asked and like what the answers are, that is the person you value way more than like yeah, I designed some really cool part, right? So I wish that school had done more to like kind of show you how a job really works and what professionalism looks like.
Yeah, definitely to go off of that. For the second question, I kind of have something like a little bit tangent for the first, but I wish like school taught me a little bit more of like how to deliver things, like a pitch out, or even just like being prepared for a meeting. Like, what does that look like? Or like how to make a business case, how to do a cost analysis, how to do a time study, like simple things like that that you learn, I guess, later on too, but you learn it throughout internships as well. You don't really know how to deliver something because it's not like you're submitting an assignment and your CRN is XYZ 123 and like you're just hoping for a grade on it. You know, it's your name that's on this, and like what does the company want, what's their branding like, how do they word things, what are their buzzwords to include, and what's important to them. And like learning that, like Daniel said, just taking that couple hours every week and just understanding the culture behind it and like what do deliverables look like and what's a good versus bad. And don't be afraid to ask questions on it. Like even this summer, I was working on something with a bill of materials or like a BOM for an acronym. And I was like, well, like I've never made this before. What kind of formatting do you like? And like, what do you want in it? And I had absolutely no idea because I was new to the product as well. And people are happy to help. It's just, you need to know to ask that. And then kind of for the first question, what was the largest learning curve? Mine, I know like one big one is like asking questions and not being afraid to do so. I'm definitely on the side of like, I ask too many questions sometimes. But the largest learning curve for me is like not being an expert in something and just knowing absolutely nothing. And you walk in and you have no idea where the bathroom is. You have no idea who to direct to or who to report to, who knows what, where to go to ask questions on things. And, just being humble in that repair of just like, yeah, I have no idea how to do this and I don't know what I'm doing, but trying your best every single day to look for that and just understanding like the little wins that you're making each day. Like, oh, I found this part today, or oh, I understood this process today to an extent, you know, and maybe tomorrow I'll be better at it. But just showing like you're trying your best is okay because they're not expecting you to be an expert by any means. So don't be too hard on yourself with that. And it's hard because in school you are given a week to be an expert on all test one material. And in professional world, it's not like that. It takes time to be an expert in something. And usually you don't ever become an expertise after an internship, but you do have a lot of knowledge about many things.
Yeah, you guys, I think you hit a lot that I would definitely agree with. Plus one again for the professionalism, and I'll add on a little bit more and say that I wish we learned more about how to ask good questions in school. A lot of my summer was just trying to figure out exactly what it was that I was stuck on so I could ask a good question about it. And it takes a lot of like, not trial and error, but a lot of like repetitive asking the wrong questions until you figure out what the right questions are. And eventually you'll figure out how to ask good questions. And I still have a long way to go with that, but.
Cool, that's awesome, guys. So the next question is, what activity have you participated in at Tech that prepared you the most for the professional world?
All right, I want to start off with this one. So for me, I wanted to get involved like as soon as I got to Tech. Freshman year, I applied to a whole bunch of different design teams, was rejected from a bunch of them, but I did make it onto one. And that was the 3D printed aircraft competition. And I worked with them all freshman year. And after freshman year, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. But I still learned a whole lot going through that. And I was later able to use that experience to get onto other teams. So later on, kind of second half of freshman and first half of sophomore year, I worked on this CubeSat team. And again, I learned more. And sophomore year, I finally joined the one that I'm currently on right now that I would say has prepared me the most for just knowing how to act professionally and to present my work professionally, and to, especially for the industry I want to go into, how the whole design process works. So that team is Virginia Tech RockSat X. We make payloads experiments for sounding rockets, and every August we launch them out of Wallops Flight Facility with NASA. And it's just been so relevant to the industry I want to go in. The design process procedure that we go through is the exact same design process procedure that you would go through at any aerospace company. So you're going to go through your conceptual and your procedural and critical design, and then you're going to build and test all your stuff. It takes you through the entire cycle. And now, as a student leader on that team, I am hopefully going to learn a lot more about the leadership side of that, which I think will help me out wherever I go next.
I would probably say, I guess, first of all, I don't know if it's an activity, but obviously the starter of it was the Hypatia Olympian Learning Community, which is really funny because they advertise it like crazy that it really helps you for success, but it does. Whether it's like how to hold a professional conversation, how to ask the right questions, honestly, what is a SMART goal, and like how to make goals, and that helps you with deliverables. How to write an email is something that like is so undermined of like what a good email looks like, and what like when you can start to have more casual emails or something of that sort, or a good signature or something like that. Like, given mine are not perfect by any means, but that was a really great setup to really like get your foot in the door of having this professional appearance. Really, I think that's like what most of it is. But outside of that, in terms of like working in teams, I would say like Environmental Coalition, which is kind of funny, I guess, because it's not like your classic professional development organization, but it's a horizontal organization. I'm currently in it as well. I guess quick plug, if you're looking for an environmental organization, feel free to join. I'm the president, and we're all super welcoming, and it's great. But anyways, this organization is horizontal, meaning everyone has the same say and value in what they say. And that kind of created for me, like anytime we were having a meeting or planning something or asking for thoughts, I always felt comfortable speaking my mind. And that just carried on into many other meetings and groups, which really prepared me for the professional world, instead like of me feeling comfortable to speak up when I have questions or speak up when I think something is off or wrong, because that happens. Like there's times where I was an intern and I was like I thought I saw this a little bit differently, and then my manager's like, oh yeah, I think you're right, like I'm getting confused with what we did 2 years ago. And you're like, nice, like I knew what I was talking about, which again like carries a lot of weight, like Daniel was saying earlier. But definitely just not being afraid to speak up is huge.
This is kind of a tough one to answer because I don't want to be overly critical, but I definitely so I started the Hyperloop team back in 2015. I think that's the right year, in 2015. I was really into transportation, and I read about the white paper and the competition that was coming out of it, and I found a few other like-minded people, and we really went for it. And like the thing that prepared me the most for what working in a professional world would be like was dealing with the fact that like tech and other design teams did not support us at all. Like we were kicked out of almost every building on campus. Like we were kicked out of the CAD lab, we were kicked out of the WARE lab. We got no funding. We were told we were wasting our time. And then we won, like we got 4th place in the world. And then suddenly like everyone lined up to support us. And the lesson I learned there was like deliver a result, like win, and then people will support it. But like the most important thing is that you can show that you are good, like that you have some validating proof. And like this was something, this is exceptionally important at the Boring Company. Like we dug a test tunnel in LA just to prove to people that we weren't like just like, oh, like we want to dig tunnels maybe. We're like, yeah, like fly to LA, we'll pick you up and we'll drive you through the tunnel that we made, right? And so now I'm out in Vegas and we're working on projects here. And I think like on both a big company scale and like a personal scale, you will be trusted to do things and you will be asked to take on more responsibility if you deliver, like if you show that you can do it. And like oftentimes it will be very, very difficult the first time, and then you will be given a bunch of resources to go do it the second time. And like, I encourage you to always make sure that you're biting off more than you can chew and consistently upping what you deliver. But that was definitely my experience. And once we did well and proved it, then tech was awesome and supported us in a huge way. But you know, schools are really, college and tech is a great environment because there are a lot of resources, and there's essentially no cost to failing. Like if your design team sucks, it doesn't matter. It's not gonna like personally cost you a bunch of money, and you probably still learn something. So yeah, take really big risks. If you think that a design team would be cool and it doesn't exist, or you don't like think that the current design team is going to get it done, just go start it. Start your companies. Like use every resource tech has, and just have zero fear of failing, and that will prepare you well for the professional world.
Yeah, that is great. I think overarching theme is just get involved and do something, whether it's in an organization, a professional organization, a society, a design team. Just put yourself out there and try to get more involved. So the next question we have is, what is your best tip to be successful at a career fair, and how would you adjust that advice to an all virtual environment?
I'll start, and kind of going with this theme of getting involved. It's get involved, and then once you do get involved, make sure that your resume captures everything that you want it to and everything that you have done that you were proud of. Another thing is to this. Now that we're all virtual, this might not be a good answer, but sell yourself when you introduce yourself to a recruiter like you're pitching a company. You know, I've done this experience and I have this knowledge and blah, 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 and this is why you should hire me, and capture all that in like 3 or 4 sentences. Now that we've moved online, I'm still trying to figure that out. I went to Lockheed Martin Day earlier and I waited in the line for 4 hours. So it's certainly different, and we're all learning right now. But you know, same thing. Pitch yourself like you're pitching a company. Maybe you could probably add a little more detail to your pitch now that it's like text over brazen. But then the other thing, yeah, is just to get involved. And if you don't want to join a design team, maybe you can ask a professor if you can do research with them. That's something I've done in the past too. That's certainly given me valuable knowledge and given me stuff to talk about at career fairs.
Yeah, that's a great answer, especially on like the technical side of things. And also like see yourself as a company. Like you yourself are a brand. Like I'm brand Jenny Lynn Johnson. As cheesy as it sounds, like you have to sell yourself and want them to believe that you're awesome, essentially. But what is really important to me is like passion. So I'm like a very passionate person, and just show your interest. Like, first of all, you should be talking to companies that you're genuinely interested in and have something that aligns with them, because like then you'll be usually happy working for them, or at least you'll feel good supporting something that they're doing. So when you talk to them, like express this passion, be excited, show emotion in your voice. If you talk with your hands, show your hands, like that's okay. And especially in a virtual environment, you know, everyone has Zoom fatigue. Recruiters are probably going to be super tired. So seeing someone who's like upbeat, excited, asking them how they're doing, talking about their life, what they're interested about, and just being genuinely passionate about something, as weird as it sounds, like it's kind of rare sometimes. So show a little bit more of like your personality and what you're like and what you do like.
This is interesting. Again, my best advice here is don't be successful at a career fair. Like per hour that you spend, these are like remarkably bad investments. I think I applied to 100 companies. I did like 30 interviews, 15 second round interviews, and I got 0 job offers from all of those. And then because our team did well in the Hyperloop competition, I had 1 20-minute interview with SpaceX and got like the position was mine because we did it. And like when I got the job at Eastman, I didn't even go by their booth at a career fair. I talked to them because they came to ASME. And so like that, like the best advice I can give, like if you're not in your major's professional society, like that's a joke. You should definitely do that. Like they all do like lunch and learns, dinner and learns, company tours, and companies are getting tons and tons of applicants. So like the way that you show that you're passionate about what you're doing is that you're like involved in your majors club, or that you're on a project team. And like SpaceX, like the running joke is like, if you want to work at SpaceX, just do well on a formula team, because SpaceX, like it's a 1,000 to 1 applicants to spot ratio. So like they have to use every filter that they can imagine, which is like, are you on a successful team? Do you have a decent GPA at a top-notch university, right? So like you guys all go to Virginia Tech, you're really, really smart people. You have a huge leg up on, you know, some other universities, but yeah, like don't be like one of the 1,000. Be like, oh, that's the person that you know, was on that team or did that project that I heard about, and I really want them working here. And then the best piece of interview advice I've ever gotten was don't show up to an interview empty-handed. Like a resume doesn't count. This guy, he started the Imagineering program at Disney, and he's actually a Virginia Tech alumni. And he got hired by Disney to do like create Imagineering as a student, because when they came into the interview, he just had all these like toys and trinkets and like little gadget things, and he was just like, these are all fun to me, and I just made these because they're awesome. And they were like, yeah, come do that for Disney. And every day he would just like build fun toys and like play with them and like get people to have fun. And that's like now, actually when I would do interviews before, like I would bring in this piece of cable and I would explain like why this shielding could be used for grounding and like why it was sized the way it was sized. And then I would just like hand the person that cable, and like, I don't know, it cost me like maybe $1 or $2 to like give out cables at every interview. But that person walked out like knowing that I knew what I was talking about and that they had something to hold and like show for it. And that was like remarkably more successful. So as far as the all virtual environment, I mean, you guys are facing a challenge kind of unlike anyone else. So I would say like make a really cool YouTube video showing off a project that you made, and then send it to recruiters and be like, you know, here's something I did. And that seems like a kind of dramatic way to get some attention. But yeah, like make sure that you're applying through some channel that isn't just one of 1,000 people at a career fair. And then I think, yeah, like find clever ways to show your passion.
Thank you guys. That was all such good advice. So the next one is, what is one thing that you wish you knew before you started as an intern?
I wish I just knew one thing before I started as an intern. Before I started, I knew nothing at all. Yeah, which is cool. Like I generally still feel that way. I've like learned a couple of tips and tricks, but like bar none, the best advice that I could ever give anyone is like, make sure that you're learning something every day. And if you learn something every day and you work a lot of hours, you will just really quickly outpace everyone else, and you will get to do the coolest things because you've learned the most. Like even if you're stuck doing like mundane data entry all day, at the end of the day, just like go ask the janitor how they clean the floors and figure that one out, because like there's no point in doing an internship or a job if you're not going to get better every day. It's just a wasted day.
Yeah, I agree. Like there's 1,000,001 things I wish I knew before starting an internship, like what is the product and how does it work? But that's a giant question. In general, like just ask questions and people are happy to answer them. Like that was sometimes like, oh, sorry to bug you, or sorry I'm an inconvenience. Like, no, you're not an inconvenience. Do not be sorry. You're there to learn, and they understand that. And they want you to learn as well. So like, don't feel sorry for everything. I think that's something like I was a little bit of a learning curve too, was like a new level of confidence I needed. Just be like, nope, this is what I'm doing because I'm interested in it. Is this okay with you? Great. Okay, I'm gonna go do these other 10 things along with what you also want me to do too.
Yeah, I can't really top Daniel's answer, but like I said before, wish I knew how to ask questions, something I'm still working on, but how to ask good questions. If I knew that before I started, especially in my most recent internship, I feel like it would have been super helpful.
Yeah, I completely echo Jenny Lynn in the confidence department. I think just going in knowing that these people want to help you. They want you to learn as much as you can in your internship. You should put in the effort to learn as much as you can, but if you need help, like do not feel afraid to go ask for it. And they want to help you. They want you to get a full-time offer or succeed in your internship. So just believe in yourself and have a little more confidence. So we'll go to the next question. Thinking back to your first day on the job, what was the most daunting and how did you overcome it?
I have a silly answer for this. I didn't know what to call my manager. Like, do I call them Jake? Do I call them Mr. Haas? Do I call them Mr. Jake Haas? Like, what do I refer to them as? And like, honestly, you can never go wrong with Mr. something, but especially in the manufacturing world, it's much more casual where you call 60, 70-year-old men Mark, and you kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable at first. Like especially your first internship, because you're like, I don't know you and you could be my grandfather, but I'm going to call you by your first name and it's going to be okay. But just ask them like what they like, just introduce yourself like, oh, it's great to like meet you in person again, like I'm Jenny Lynn, and then usually they'll be like, oh, I'm so and so, and then just call them what they say their name as. And if you still feel uncomfortable, then like ask them something else that you would call them instead. But usually if they introduce them as their first name, then just call them as such.
For me, especially this most recent summer, I think it was a technical, daunting task on the first day. So between my most recent internship and my prior internships, normally onboarding and just kind of getting acclimated took longer in the old job at Leidos. But at Herrick Tech Labs this summer, day one, it was like, got my laptop, filled out a couple forms, okay, time to get to work. And the first thing my boss emailed me was, hi, Danny, nice to meet you. Sent me this 40-page telecommunications recommendation and said, all right, implement that in MATLAB. Those are my only instructions. So I was completely overwhelmed at first, but really I just broke it down into chunks. I spent a long time defining the problem before I started actually writing any code. And eventually got through it much faster than I thought I would, and was on to the next project.
Those are awesome. It's really hard to think about this. Like I know at SpaceX, like during orientation, they give this little like part of their speech, and they're like, most of you are probably used to being the smartest person in the room. Like, good luck with that here. And that was like, I was like painfully aware. I was not a space person. I didn't like, I don't know what the different shuttle names are. I don't know what the different, I couldn't tell you like how a Soyuz functions differently than something else. Like I was not a rocket guy. And there was people there who are like, since I was breathing, the only thing I've ever wanted to do is work on rockets. And like they live and breathe it. Like they have pictures of them like, 5 days old, and their parents are like teaching them how rocket science works. You will always meet that person at every job, and like how you overcome it is you realize that like they just know a bunch of facts about something, but that doesn't make them necessarily great at like figuring out what needs to be done and like knowing like the process, right? Like knowing who the commander of the second shuttle mission was does not matter at all when you're trying to build a rocket or like build a test frame. It doesn't, like, this is useless knowledge, but like knowing how to like spec a grade of steel or like what pumps are and that like that's super useful knowledge. So I was very overwhelmed by the fact that it seemed like everyone else was way more qualified to be where we were. And the way I overcame it is just like, focusing on what was actually in front of us instead of just like the pretty pictures on the wall.
Yeah, thank you guys. Those are great answers. I love how different they all are for each of your experiences. So I think we're gonna make this the last question, and then I wanna get to some of the chat questions before we run out of time. So the last question is, did you feel a sense of competition with other interns? And if so, what strategies did you utilize to move past that?
I would say at times. So it's kind of hard because your first or second internship, Like whether if it's not going straight into like your year of graduating, it usually isn't super competitive. And for me, like my internships were always very separate from other interns. So I was never, like I was working sometimes on a team with them, but it wasn't a point where I was like, who can do it better, or like giving the same task to two people and seeing what's the best. If a company sets you up like that, I feel like that's not great in the first place. But sometimes you feel competition in the sense, kind of like what Daniel was talking about, how someone knows all these facts. And me, my first internship and second in aviation, aviation's cool. It was never like a strong passion of mine, but I really loved manufacturing, and that's like opportunities that came up for it. So I didn't know all the engine names. I didn't know exactly how all the engines were working, except like a general high level. So sometimes it would feel like I was kind of chopped liver compared to a lot of other interns who knew everything. And strategy wise, on top of that, like how to, I guess, see that kind of goes back to the daunting too, is to me, it's just like, remember they're a person too. Like they're just a human. They're also usually a student. Sometimes you're same major, sometimes you're same year. But they're just a person and they're just a human learning just like you are. And you're on the same playing field, and there's no reason to feel a competition with another intern. You both have the internship and you're both doing work to help further the goal and the product.
For me, this past year, I didn't really get that feeling at all. I was working on my own pretty much individual project. If I needed help, I would reach out to the full-time people, but I wasn't working like directly with any other interns. So when I did interact with them, it was just to chat. Now the year before, when I was working on a software engineering team, I did kind of get that feeling, and it's because, you know, we're working, and we can see on Git like who's made what commits, who's writing how much code, and that kind of can feel like, okay, well, he's getting more done than me, so I need to like kick it into overdrive. And for me, I don't think that was necessarily a bad thing, because it definitely motivated me to like get more done. But you know, as long as you're getting good feedback, and if you think you're on the right track, you should verify that you're on the right track. If you think you're lagging behind, you should talk to your manager, or talk to, you know, someone with more experience, and say, hey, am I getting enough done, or what can I do to be better?
Yeah, I think what Jenny Lynn said of like, I've always been quite separate from other interns, like functionally. But this question was really surprising me, because like almost all of my friends now are people that I interned with at some point along the way. And like, I've heard about it in finance and like in software, where it feels like, you know, the top 10 out of this room of 100 are going to get hired. So everyone, like, it's just like a Hunger Games type deal. And just don't do that. That doesn't sound like fun. And like, actually you should go way the other direction, and like, you should try to help every intern and like use other interns, because they're in the exact same boat as you. And it's kind of like a freshman dorm sort of experience, except you and this person are incredibly similar, right? Like if you both wound up at the same place doing the same internship, you have a lot in common. And like, try really hard to make friends with a lot of interns, because like 90% of them will go work somewhere else that you might have an interest in working in later. And two, they're just like awesome people that are like from all over. I think that like, yeah, internships are like, for nerds, it's like the best way to make friends.
Just to reiterate that, like I still talk to my friends that I met at internships 2 years ago, and like it's like we're thinking of visiting each other in like a month, given if COVID's like not crazy, but that probably will happen still. But yeah, I guess that's like going into the first day. Like I wish I knew the friendships I was about to make, and it sounds super cheesy, but people who also have internships, like Daniel was saying, in the same field or job description as you, like you guys probably have a lot of common, and you do. So like, don't be afraid to go meet the other interns, and just go and like go get a coffee with them, or if you're of age, like go to a brewery, grab a beer, and just like chat and get to know the person.
I think
To
it's an
finish up my
important
thought, oh, do you want to go, Daniel?
Oh, mine's quick. Yeah, I think it's an important rite of passage to like you and all of the interns go grab a beer and complain about work. That's like, you got to do that once.
Yes, for sure.
So to finish up my thought, I think what I was trying to say when I was talking about like, you feel like you're behind or ahead of other interns, especially when you're like writing code, you can see who's written what. The way to move past that is to focus on yourself, and instead of comparing yourself to the other interns to get feedback, like I said, ask the more experienced people, am I doing the right thing? And if I'm not, what can I do to improve? And not just comparing to like, how much code have I written versus how much code has this other intern written?
Yeah, real quick on that note, you want to get to the next question. I would definitely set up touch points with your manager, especially if they're heading like 20 other interns or something. So one, you can stay on track with your own progress and feel confident in what you're doing too. And just stay on track in general and keep in touch with them.
Yeah, I will say my experience is a little different. Going virtual, I think it created more competition. So I think that could be like an issue that arises because we were all supposed to be in different departments, but we ended up all just doing sort of a general track in supply chain. So you're all on the same playing field, but I think a way to mitigate with that was definitely getting closer with the interns, learning more about them, sharing tips with each other, like, hey, I emailed our manager this. Do you want to help me with this? Just like you're all in this together kind of thing. I think that definitely helped me a lot this summer. And I also still talk to the interns. We have Zoom happy hours still, and it's been really great. So going into the chat, we will start with Calvin's question. I think it's directed to Daniel, but anyone can answer if they want. We'll try to get through these as quickly as possible. If you are limited to 4 years of school financially, would you still recommend focusing on projects at your internship instead of school?
Yeah, one, talk to your advisor. There are probably loopholes in your financial thing. And like, I know people who had to do co-ops or else they would have like starved to death at school because like, and they saved all their money. And like some co-ops, you can make quite a bit. But otherwise, like never let a summer or winter break go by without like some kind of thing at the end that you can show that you did. Actually, my brother wrote like a banking analysis software over a winter break, and he just didn't sleep. Like Christmas Day, he was like programming away, and like, yeah, so it probably took him 3 weeks, and it was like a very hard 3 weeks. At the end of the day, it got him like hired, and a company bought the software from him, like bought the software and gave him a job because of it. And it was just like he just had an idea and did it. And like I know there was like a drone team. There was just like 2 kids in a dorm, and they were just like gonna stay over spring break one time, and like built most of the dorm in the spring break, and then went and like won a competition, and now they're like the hot shots. So just like never ever let time go by without working on a project. Your grades are important, but like yeah, just constantly deliver on some project, whether it's a team or a personal one.
Awesome. So the next question I will direct to, I think Danny would be good for this one. For these internships, what are the expectations for GPA, clubs, and previous experience? And essentially, how do you get that foot in the door internship?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that. So starting with GPA, so something I heard at a kind of off the record chat with hiring managers at a conference I went to last year was that as long as your GPA is a 3.0 and meets the like screening software's whatever program, they don't care. As long as it's as long as it meets the minimum requirement, they don't care. Clubs, previous experience, yeah, like I was saying before you get your first internship, you want to have stuff to talk about, first to put on your resume so you can get the interview, and then once you get the interview, so you can, pass the interview. So get involved with whatever you can. It doesn't have to be a design team. Doesn't have to be research even. It could be your own project. Like Daniel was saying, his brother just made something cool over winter break one time. Like that's awesome. And if you can talk about it, I think it can help you get your foot in the door.
Yeah, Jenny Lynn, if you want to add anything to that too.
I second that with the 3.0. That's usually your right of way passage. Especially, I know GE requires a 3.0 and they physically cannot do anything lower because they have something with the government or something like that. I heard it somewhere. But I know some companies require higher than that, but I would just at least stay above a 3.0 and then also have your projects and such.
Awesome, thanks. And I've also heard from the last panel that Tony moderated, a lot of companies are getting rid of the GPA requirement just as they go on. So I would say just apply to anything and see if you have any other friends and internships that can recommend you. That would be my best advice. The next question from Robert: how long should you struggle on a problem before asking for help? I think I have my mentors in my internship after my freshman year gave me like the best advice for this. She said, never go to your manager or your op staff with problems, go to them with solutions. So if you're experiencing a problem and you can't figure out how to do something, go to your manager and say, I've thought of it this way, and this way. We can do it 3 different ways. What do you recommend is the best path for moving forward? I think that was probably the best advice I've gotten, and I've carried it with me throughout all of my internships. So if anyone has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I agree. Like, at least give a couple stabs at it. Don't come completely empty-handed, because it shows like I didn't try and I need all of this help now. But also, like, if you don't have these 3 solutions to offer and wondering the best, just be like, okay, I've tried these things, still having this issue. What do you suggest? Have you seen this before? If not, do you know who maybe has more expertise in it? And maybe instead of, if you know what your manager does, maybe go to someone who streamlines directly into that type of work, so you can get that answer directly answered, maybe without going to your manager first. But it also depends on like the relationship you have and like how distant or how closely you work with them.
Awesome. So next question from Sophia. It says, how do you make yourself stand out as a freshman applying to internships, and did you attend the expo freshman year?
So I attended the expo, but I also attended this Galapatia expo. So it was a living and learning community, smaller expo. How to stand out? Like, one thing that they asked me was, what's the most important thing on your resume? And I would just have something like that. Like, if they don't ask you that, then maybe just tell them, be like, this is the most important, and have it something that's unique. Mine was my cosmetology license and the reason behind why I got that. And I think that helped me stand out a lot, because it's usually something that's not common among engineers. And also, expo is super overwhelming. So kind of going back to Daniel's point, is one, it helps a lot if you have a different avenue of talking to them, whether it's through professional development, or like organization or a lunch and learn or something like that. But also just being passionate. Again, this is coming from someone who likes passionate people, but I think it really speaks volumes.
Awesome. So next one, if I want to do an internship next summer, when do I need to apply? I'll take this one real quick. A lot of internships have like applications open up until even maybe March or May. But I would say apply sooner rather than later. Around Expo is the time where they start taking applicants, and they even start interviewing people after Expo. So definitely get your foot in the door as soon as possible. Research companies, research when their applications are open, and apply as soon as you possibly can. And then we'll do 2 more. If you had to move for your internship, how was the move, and how did you work through that transition if it was difficult?
I can take this one because I've had to move a lot. So I moved to Kingsport, Tennessee when I worked for Eastman, and that was like, it would have been less drastic to move to Europe. That was very different world to me, and I didn't know a single person in the state of Tennessee, never been there in my life. And it was like 6 inches of snow on the ground. I slipped and fell on black ice. I got food poisoning the first day. Like, it was objectively terrible, but I was so excited about like moving out and doing things on my own that I was just like, I was not going to quit. And then it like started getting more and more awesome. But like, it was daunting, and that was the first time I lived like far away from family. So yeah, it was a lot. And then moved back home, and I got to live at home while I was doing my next internship, which I highly recommend. If your parents have like a sweet house that you can live in for free, just do that. You know, I'm 27 and I would do that in a heartbeat if I had the chance. And then, yeah, SpaceX was super cool because that was LA, and yeah, like you can go to some really cool places. And I know people that have taken internships that probably weren't the smartest career moves they've ever made, but it's just because they were like, I'm going to Hawaii for 3 months and I'm going to be like a submarine engineer. And I'm like, no interest in doing this, but free trip to Hawaii for 3 months. So especially because like most reasonable companies will pay for your travel to get out there. So just like view these as like paid vacations that you might have to learn a little bit. And yeah, like travel as much as you possibly can. Go as far away from home as you can. You'll survive. Like you don't need a car. You don't need a nice apartment. You can live out of a bag and work really hard for a few months, and it's awesome.
I just want to add something onto that too. Like, I've had internships in like all different locations, so moving around every like 3 to 6 months with school, and definitely look for community. When you move to a new place, it's super exciting and fun to get involved in so many things at once, but don't be afraid to go out and meet some people, because it's always a lot more fun to just do things with people and have a community somewhere. Whether it's other interns or just young adults that are in the area, college students nearby, something, just go and meet people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also look at where your company's locations are. I know Pepsi has locations everywhere. So even though I interned at Lynchburg and I'll be working at Lynchburg probably for the next 2 years, they love when people move around. So I can always move around to different locations. And I think look at it as an opportunity. Don't view it as something that's so daunting. I think it's exciting to look forward to it. And then last question, I know we're a little bit over, but for personal projects, what do you recommend for the scope of the project? Do you recommend doing a project that has online resources like DIY? I don't know if you meant DIY, or completely independent projects?
I'll speak to that a little bit.
There you go.
Okay. I've only done like one kind of project like that. A lot of my other stuff has been supervised under like research or a team. But what I made was just like something that I thought was cool and that I really wanted to like invest my time in because it would just be fun. And I ended up being able to talk about it. So it was an audio visualizer that has like a giant VT on it. So it's like a piece of plexiglass that I like sanded to make it like all glass, translucent, put a big VT on it, and then behind it are these LED lights. And I used like a couple integrated circuits with an Arduino and wrote some code, and it like plays music and has this cool equalizer effect. And in terms of like how long did it take me to build the circuits, maybe like only like 8 hours or something, and then to build the other part another like 4 hours. So it wasn't a huge project, but like I think the most important part is just making sure you're doing something that you are interested in and you want to put your time towards.
Yeah, that can't be stressed enough. Like you should bite off way more than you can chew. Like a lot of people think they're like, I'm not really a car person, and to be honest, I don't care at all about cars. But like rebuilding a car is a really, really good engineering exercise because there's so many things. And then also like every aspect of a car is on YouTube. So you can learn anything. And yeah, just like go do all of the stuff and like commit to it and like buy a car and like work on it and be committed to it. But like if you're not excited about it, you will lose interest and you'll like talk yourself out of it. But one of the best examples I know is like, so in rockets, you use a lot of tanks that are overwrapped with composites. And this guy who's in charge of that program, I was like, how did you end up working on this at SpaceX? And he's like, oh, I was building one of these machines in my garage because I think they're really cool. And that's like neurotic behavior. Like who would build like a composite fiber winding machine in their garage? But like, yeah, SpaceX found that guy and they put him in charge of like making tanks, and he was really good at it because he knew it. So like figure out what just like gets you stoked and then do something like completely ridiculous and like, yeah, spend way too much time and energy on it. Like if you're not pulling one all-nighter on your personal project, then it's not a big enough project.
That's awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much to our panelists. I'm going to hand it back over to Ryan.
Yep, I'm sure. So I just wanted to thank everyone again for taking the time to come out. Daniel, Jenny Lynn, Danny, and then of course Alexandra for moderating this evening. So yeah, all of the panelists are on LinkedIn, so you can look them up. I saw some of them also put their emails in the chat, which is great if you want to reach out to them that way. I'll be sending a follow-up email tomorrow just with some more events that are coming up and stuff like that. But otherwise, thank you again, everyone, for coming out, and I'll see you guys all soon.